At its worst, a random encounter table becomes an unprepared content table. At its best though, it's a vessel for satisfying emergent storytelling. Now, there is some juice there in that emergent storytelling, but it's not always my kind of juice, right? I want something more satisfying and more reliable than random. So, my solution is something I'm calling relevant encounter tables. This content is prepared. This content is story relevant. It's arranged on a D6 table specifically curated for this adventure. It's always geared towards exposition. So here we go. I'm going to break down the rules for how to make a relevant encounter table. And if you want a full write-up of these rules, you can get it on Patreon right now for $5. I appreciate support in these crazy OGL times more than ever. So here are the rules, and we're going to use this starter set as an example. Rule number 1, you're going to have 6 items on your D6 table, and each one should be geared towards a different piece of exposition. So what you do is you find 6 different facts that you want to impart onto the party, and then you list them in order of priority, with the most important fact on number 6 and the least important fact on number 1. For the starter set, here are the facts I want to impart on my party. Rule number 2, encounters happen every time the party travels between 2 locations, because normally when dungeon masters are going, do you get a random encounter during the night or during your travel? Sometimes they'll make the players run a skill check, like a survival check, to see if they can pick a safe pass through. And if they fail, then they'll roll on a separate table to go, now you get a wandering monster or a random encounter. Or sometimes they'll just make the players roll on like a D100 list of encounters where 1 to 50 is no encounter. But because we are stacking every relevant encounter with relevant information, we actually want the players to get these random encounters, right? Because when they get these encounters, they learn stuff about the story and advance the plot. So we're saying, regardless of where they're traveling, if they're traveling on the world map from Dragon's Rest to Seagrow Caves, they get an encounter. If they travel back from Seagrow Caves to Dragon's Rest, they get another encounter. Rule number 3, you should cross encounters off your list once they've been resolved, because it would be overkill to give the same encounter multiple times or to seed the same information multiple times in a similar way. So a good idea is only good once. Just run each of these encounters once. Rule number 4 is that when your players encounter something that's been crossed off your list, instead of getting no encounter, they instead get the encounter which is 1 higher. So let's say the players encounter kobolds by rolling a 4. Then the next time they roll a 4 again. Instead of getting nothing, they encounter number 5, which might be a YouTuber asking for subscriptions, or maybe a wizard tearing up a 20-year-old license. This mechanic means that probability-wise, over enough rolls, the table skews towards the higher result. So that's why I asked you earlier, put the thing you most want to happen, the most important bit of exposition, put that on number 6, because over time, that's more likely to come up. And rule number 5, this one might be a little controversial. I think you should use the same template for all of your relevant encounter tables. That means whenever the players roll a 1, they're getting a combat. Whenever they roll a 2, they're getting a trap. Whenever they roll a 3, they're getting a challenge. Whenever they roll a 4, they're getting a spectacle. 5, they learn something about the villain. And 6, they advance the main plot somehow. I think that might be controversial for some of you because people like to keep their secrets close. Like dungeon masters are meant to be secretive. They're behind their screen. But I personally prefer lifting that veil, lifting that screen, and then making the players kind of complicit in the drama and the gameplay. I think it would be really helpful for giving the players context of what they've rolled. Oh, we rolled a 4, that means we're going to see something important. Yes, we rolled a 6, we get to advance the main plot. Oh no, we rolled a 1, that means we have to fight something. And you'll notice on this template, the only wandering monster, the only guaranteed combat is a 1. Most of these are different kinds of encounters. Let me break it down, okay? Here's what I would put on each of these numbers for Dragons of Stormwreck Isle, and you can use these as examples for what you would want to put on your own encounters. On a 1, the party gets a relevant combat encounter. That means it's something that's always detrimental to the party. It's something that always results in combat. We're not talking our way out of this. You are being attacked by something or someone. Combat should be difficult, but not deadly, because it's not satisfying to lose a character to a random dice roll, right? And combatants should always be foreshadowed somehow. We don't want to fight a creature for which we have no context for. And here's an example. For our list, the fact we said we wanted to put on our number 1 was discover something new about the island. Well, check this out. On page 14, there is an owlbear encounter. That's a pretty exciting beast. So we're going to move that owlbear fight to the hot springs location. So now when the party is wandering through the forest, or if they row their boat too close to the mainland, they see these hot springs and out comes charging this owlbear, or like swimming out to them, and it attacks them, right? It insists on violence. The owlbear for a level 1 or 2 party is a very tough fight, but it's not deadly because if the party flees, it will not pursue them. But we need to foreshadow it, right? So before even putting this on my table, before even having it as an option, I would have an NPC in town say to them, yeah, it's pretty crazy. Like a couple of years ago, a circus troupe came by. Yeah, and they had like a really scary monster. I didn't see it because I'm only like a week old. I'm a kobold. But yeah, there's like a monster out there in the woods somewhere that used to be part of a circus. Anyway, bye. I'm the NPC. And after the fight, we've accomplished our goal because now the parties know about the hot springs location. This is a place they can rest up and spend 10 minutes in the water to spend a hit dice. When the players roll a 2 on the relevant encounter table, they'll get a trap encounter. Relevant trap encounters are always detrimental to the party, but the players are tested somehow to work out to what degree it affects them. Just like a combat encounter, the trap is unavoidable. It insists on the player's attention. You have to deal with this right now. For the starter set, the fact we want to impart on the players is that the myconids have turned aggressive. Hey guys, there's something wacky going on with mushrooms. So let's say a portion of the island's vegetation is a kind of Minecraft style mushroom forest. And when the players get nearby this, either in their rowboat or on foot, there comes this silent rolling cloud of orange and yellow spores engulfing the whole wilderness. And you should describe this cloud as mushroom based and invasive and unnatural. When the players are engulfed by these spores, they can't see anything, their eyes start watering, and they have to make a DC 12 Constitution saving throw. If they succeed, then they only take 1d6 damage. But if they fail, they take 1d6 damage and they are poisoned for the next 8 hours. When the players roll a 3, they encounter a challenge. So relevant challenge encounters are only sometimes detrimental to the party, because the players are tested to determine whether they can avoid or mitigate the negative effects of the challenge. Like the other encounters, this is an obstacle that demands the players' attention. This is an obstacle that is impeding their progress. And the challenge can be a bunch of stuff. It could be a puzzle, it could be a riddle, it could be a mini game, or it could be a skill challenge. I love a skill challenge. So let's look at one of those. Picture this. The party are walking in the woods and they hear this beautiful siren song on the wind. It's the harpy trying to charm them. And she's singing, OGL, OGL, OGL blues. Watsy swung by and said, Perko, you lose. Now we can't publish the things that we want. I can't finish this rhyme in a way that won't get me demonetized. Okay, so everybody has to make a saving throw against the harpy's charming effect, right? If everybody succeeds, then they're not charmed and they can ignore this challenge. You have succeeded. Good job, players. But if anybody fails, they're going to walk into the brush and try and find the harpy. The harpy's going to swoop down, grab that player. If there's multiple players, just grab one of them, and then start lifting them off the ground to try and take them back to her nest to like eat and kill them, I guess. So here's where the skill challenge begins. You say, players, this lady's trying to steal your mate. Gonna kill him. You don't want that. So you've got to get 3 successes in this skill challenge before you get 3 failures. But here's my favorite bit, because for every failure the players get, the harpy is getting higher and higher off the ground, 10 feet at a time. So if the players get 3 successes and 0 failures, then that lady's didn't even get to take off. That's fine. But if they get 1 failure, that player's dropped 10 feet, or the player's dropped on 2 failures, 20 feet. or on 3 failures, 30 feet, and that's a D6 per failure in falling damage for that player. Also, if the harpy somehow dies in this encounter, that's fine, but I'm not saying you should treat this like combat. We're not rolling initiative, we're just having loosey-goosey skill challenge fun. When the players roll a 4, they'll get a spectacle encounter. A relevant spectacle encounter is something the players have entirely the option of engaging with. They can choose to engage with it, they can choose to ignore it. It's totally fine. But a spectacle works a little bit different to the other encounters because the players get the juice, the exposition from this just by peeping it, just by seeing it. And then if they choose to engage further with the spectacle, then that's how they'll get extra context about this information. And at that point, it might resolve into one of the other encounter types. The spectacle might resolve into a trap. It might resolve into a combat, into a challenge, or into a role-playing encounter. The piece of exposition we wrote down for the starter set was that kobolds are collecting dragon bones for spark render. To run the kobolds as a spectacle, I'd suggest you use the encounter on page 15 of the starter set, but I would specify that you need to say these kobolds are dragging dragon bones with them, and they're accompanied by 2 winged kobolds, both of them blue, both of them carrying between them a single hacky looking flamethrower cannon. This is Mech and Min, Sparkrender's henchmen. And just by virtue of seeing this happen from a distance, bing bang boom, that's some exposition, baby. But if the players do decide to engage, then you could treat this as a combat encounter. I will advise you, you should have Mech and Min fire their flamethrower and then leave, because we want these 2 henchmen ideally to live until the final encounter. If they die, that's fine, but you'll get more juice, more drama by showing them here and then resolving it later. And for the stats for the flamethrower, I would just use a Dragonborn's breath weapon stats. The last 2 options on the relevant encounter table are a bit special. Number 5, learn something about the villain, and number 6, advance the main plot. These can be any kind of encounter that you want, whichever way you think will be best for disseminating your important exposition. For result number 5, learn something about the villain, I think we could do that as a spectacle. They could see Sparkrender, the blue dragon, just circling up ahead. Now that will strike a bit of fear into the players. But if they choose to engage further, as is the nature of a spectacle, we could change it to a trap encounter. It becomes a breath weapon. Sparkrender swoops down, blasts them all, or those that are exposed with a breath weapon. They roll their saves and they fail or they succeed, and then the dragon flies on. And now they've learned something about dragons. They'll burn you. Result number 6, advance the main plot. This is the thing that you most want to happen. This is a piece of information you've been saying, oh, I just wish the players knew or had this in their possession. This is where they find that important item. They meet that important NPC. They travel to that important hidden location. Whatever bit you need just to push them further along their path, this is always a good thing that's going to happen in your story. What we wrote down is we wanted the players to learn that Lord Adron the Bronze Dragon wants to defeat Sparkrender. Now, I'm not going to bore all you people with how to roleplay this encounter in the video. I'm just going to put it downstairs in the pinned comment. Check out last week's video. It's all about the NPCs in Dragon's Rest, which is the town hub of Dragons of Stormwreck Isle.